Imagine you are at a market, eyeing a peculiar object you have just purchased, something that seemed inconsequential just moments ago, but now, in your possession, feels irreplaceably valuable. This sensation, known as the endowment effect, describes the almost magical transformation that occurs when we acquire something. We suddenly feel its worth more simply because we own it. This psychological bias is fascinating and pervasive, subtly influencing our interactions in the marketplace, from how much we're willing to pay for items to the inflated prices we might set when we sell. Take, for example, a concert ticket purchased for $100. If you find yourself unable to attend, you might instinctively set its resale price at $120, as parting with it for mere market value feels like a loss. The endowment effect quietly dictates these decisions, making us view our possessions through rose-colored lenses, and therefore often valuing them above objective standards. As both buyers and sellers, this bias affects us in nuanced ways. Marketers tap into this, nudging us toward a psychological ownership of products, encouraging us to touch, hold, or imagine using them, so that we begin feeling they're already ours. Once that sense of ownership takes root, we may pay a premium, rationalizing that the item is somehow worth more. And as sellers, this same bias can lead us to price things beyond reason, fearing an imagined loss that might come from letting go at market value. The endowment effect ties into a broader behavioral phenomenon known as loss aversion, where the potential for loss weighs more heavily in our minds than the potential for gain. In an experiment, participants were asked to decide between two hypothetical jobs, one offering some advantages but also drawbacks. Faced with this choice, most preferred their current job, regardless of which job they were assigned. This tendency reflects a broader human inclination to avoid change, even if that change might bring benefits. The fear of potential loss tends to hold us back, anchoring us in our present situations. This bias also leads to a skewed perception of opportunity costs, the benefits we forego when we choose one option over another. We often value immediate, tangible losses, like parting with an item, over the less tangible gains we might enjoy by accepting a fair price. When selling, we tend to focus more on what we're giving up than on the potential benefits, which clouds our objectivity. For instance, if you try to sell at a price too high for the market, you risk losing out on the money you could have gained by pricing it more reasonably, thus losing opportunities in the pursuit of elusive gains. Yet the endowment effect isn't only rooted in loss aversion. Some researchers suggest that it may also stem from our desire not to be taken advantage of. Their reference price theory posits that sellers are motivated by the need to avoid the sense that they're being duped. While buyers might anchor their willingness to pay around the lowest available prices, sellers tend to focus on the higher ones. This discrepancy creates a tug-of-war, where sellers aim not to sell below a reference price that feels fair to them. If you're selling a sports event ticket worth $250 and you see others selling similar ones for $400, you might feel reluctant to settle for less, regardless of your ticket's actual value. Beyond these financial considerations, the endowment effect is also shaped by our positive self-image, a phenomenon known as the mere ownership effect. We're naturally biased towards seeing ourselves in a flattering light, and this bias spills over into our possessions. Studies illustrate how our self-esteem can inflate the value of things we own. For instance, college students offered a simple drink insulator, rated it more favorably once they were told it would be theirs. It wasn't an inherently valuable item, but the mere fact that they were about to own it made it feel more appealing. Interestingly, this effect intensifies if our self-worth takes a hit, as shown in experiments where participants who received negative feedback on a task rated their thank you gifts even higher, as though the gift compensated for the blow to their ego. And fascinatingly, even without actual ownership, people can still develop a sense of psychological ownership. Minimal interaction with an item, a brief touch, a test drive, or simply having something nearby can create enough familiarity to trigger the endowment effect. For example, in an experiment where participants were given a chocolate bar and told to avoid eating it while it sat on their desk, they later valued it higher than a group given the same chocolate without the prolonged exposure. This quick bond explains why sales tactics like letting customers test drive cars or try on clothing can create an attachment that makes letting go, and hence buying, much harder. Understanding the endowment effect isn't just a theoretical exercise. It has practical implications in our daily lives, especially as consumers. Marketing experts exploit this bias, making us feel connected to products in an effort to loosen our wallets. By recognizing this, we can resist being swayed by momentary ownership feelings and make choices based on true value rather than inflated sentimentality. On the flip side, when selling, Awareness of this bias can help us avoid overpricing items, ensuring a fair deal and minimizing opportunity costs. In individualistic cultures, such as many Western societies, the endowment effect is often stronger. This difference emerges from a cultural emphasis on personal independence, which can foster a self-enhancing view of oneself, and by extension, one's belongings. An experiment involving participants from both Western and East Asian collectivist cultures demonstrated this. While both groups displayed the endowment effect, Western participants showed it more strongly. This difference aligns with individualistic societies' tendency to see their possessions as extensions of their unique identity, enhancing the bias. Our tendency to cling to what we own isn't limited to humans. Research shows that other species, such as capuchin monkeys, exhibit similar behavior. In an experiment where monkeys were given tokens to choose between two treats, they showed a strong preference to keep whichever item they initially picked, rarely trading it even when incentivized with an extra bonus. This resistance to trade highlights how deeply ingrained the endowment effect might be, even across species, suggesting that this attachment to ownership may have roots in primal survival instincts. Knowing the mechanisms of the endowment effect equips us to counter it. Recognizing when psychological ownership is at play can be our first line of defense, especially when purchasing high-value items. Sales strategies that promote an early bond with a product, like prolonged test drives or free trials, can exploit our tendency to overvalue potential purchases. By being mindful of this, we can remind ourselves that limited interaction does not equal ownership, and that high prices may not be justified based on brief feelings of attachment. On the selling side, sticking close to market value can prevent us from overpricing due to our emotional attachments. By setting a reasonable price, sellers avoid the emotional pitfalls of overvaluing their items and can achieve a balanced transaction. By balancing our natural inclinations with an awareness of the endowment effect, we can avoid common pitfalls. We can recognize moments when we may be assigning exaggerated value to objects, ensuring we make decisions that reflect genuine worth rather than psychological bias. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.